If AI is going to change the world the way electricity did, then this isn't just a technology conversation.
It's a leadership conversation, Neil. And today we're talking about what that means for you.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neil Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neil and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast. I am Robin Lewis, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. I want to introduce my co-host, my partner, Mr. Neil Oates Jr. Sir, how are you?
Doing fantastic, Robin. Thank you. I'm excited about this conversation. I'm excited about the continuation of this conversation from our previous episodes.
Me too, sir. Right on. And for our listeners, this is a place where we get to slow down long enough to think clearly about life, leadership, and the patterns that shape the direction of our lives. And before we do anything today, before we get into anything today, I think it's worth just pausing for a moment and acknowledging something that I think most people are feeling right now. We might be feeling it, but not saying too much about it out loud. And that is that things are changing fast, faster than most of us are used to. And if you're a leader, there's the tension that comes with that, right? It's not just, how do I do this? It's how do I lead when I don't fully understand what's changing just yet?
Yeah, Robin, and I think that's the part that people don't always talk about, right? There's a level of uncertainty right now, and I don't care when right now is, but there's a level of uncertainty right now. And for a lot of leaders, that's uncomfortable because we're used to being the ones with clarity, the one with all of the answers. And now we're in a moment where things are moving so quickly that the role itself is shifting even as a leader.
And I think that's why this matters so much, because the role is shifting, right? Because this isn't just about learning something new, Neil. This is really also about becoming someone new in how we lead.
Robin, I think this is where it gets real. And so we want to look at how AI will expose you. And I know if you're anything like me, even just hearing the word like, wait, AI is going to expose me. I don't like that, because what AI is going to expose is not just how we work. Hear me clearly, ladies and gentlemen. AI is going to expose how we lead.
Neil, I think that is so important because I've seen this in so many leaders over the years. You build something, you grow it, you carry a lot of responsibility, and then even without realizing it, you become the center of everything. And Neil, I could have put I for you in what I just said. I've been there.
And here's why we have been there. Because when we become the center of everything at first, that feels like strength, right? It feels good because people rely on you. Things move through you. You're needed, right? I want to be needed. But over time, it becomes the very thing that limits you and I in our leadership.
That's it, man. That's it. And so what we're saying for our listeners today, now you introduce AI with increased speeds and output and increased capability. And instead of removing that pressure, what it actually does is it exposes it.
Okay, Robin, right here. This is where you and I are going to pause. We have built our identity, our purpose on being needed. And now with a couple of clicks of a button, a mouse, and a few applications, we could feel replaced if we're not careful. Is that where we're going, Robin?
Yeah, that's certainly one of them.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, what Robin was just saying, that it does expose the removing of pressure, because now the team can move faster, but they're still waiting on us. They're still waiting on you as the leader. So the tension actually increases. We thought that we were putting these things in place and it was going to remove the tension, but now things have sped up and they're looking at Robin, they're looking at Neil, they're looking at insert your name here. And you're saying, oh my goodness, what do I do? So instead of being relaxed, we're more tense now than we were previously.
I want you to continue, but exactly right. In other words, AI doesn't create the problem, it reveals it a whole lot faster.
Okay, and Robin, I think this is where a leader has to pause and ask. So this is where we do this idea of reflecting. We pause and ask, where am I the bottleneck? Ouch. Where am I holding things up? Maybe without even realizing it. And Robin, that requires that level of honesty as a leader in reflection and asking those questions that you and I know is valuable to success.
It's so true. And hear us on this. That's not a criticism. I've been there. Neil has been there. What we're talking about here is that actually provides an opportunity, because once you see it, once you become aware of it, you can change it. That's the
All right.
point.
So, Robin, I know awareness is a big deal for you and I. And so, if we don't see it, we can't change it. And as you and I know, ignorance is not bliss. And so, if what you are saying is true, if things are changing this fast, here's the question: how do leaders actually need to think and lead differently in this landscape, in this time, in this new age?
Well, Neil, I'm so glad you asked, because I think there are three shifts that really matter right now. Three shifts that really matter right now. And the first one is to think in principles and not in tactics. Think in principles, not in tactics, because principles endure. If you build your leadership on tactics, you're going to constantly feel like you're chasing the next thing, right? You're going after the next thing. And then you're always going to feel behind then. But if you build on principles, you don't panic when things change. When you're building on principles, all you need to do now is to adjust.
Yeah, Robin. So that's so important. And I'm looking at it as a 2-decade realtor, right? And what I realize in my personal life and in my business is that tools will change, platforms will change, but you mentioned those principles: clarity, value, trust, leadership. Those things do not change. So if you as a leader are anchored in principles, we stay steady, even when things are moving. And so I love that. And so here's what I heard you say, and here's what I get: that if you anchor to tactics, you feel behind. But if you anchor to principles, we can adjust. And that's our goal, to be able to adjust as things shift, as they move, and as things are uncertain.
And that's what leadership is all about, man. So carry on, my brother. I think that's right on.
Okay, so the next one that I want to look at is going to be lead with curiosity, not certainty. And for us as leaders, we talked about early on, I said we're used to having the answers. We're used to being in the know. But I think this is one of the hardest shifts for leaders: letting go of needing to have the answer and becoming someone who's willing to explore. Because it's not fun to say, I don't know. Even if we have to say it to ourselves, I don't know the answer. I don't know, but I'm curious enough to find out.
That's so real, Neil. I think we're being real with our listeners today. I just had in my quiet time just last week, so just a few days ago, where I wrote down on my journal, seek help. And so I think you're being real today, sir.
Okay, and so they hear you say that, Robin, seek help. But I hear when I hear you say that is, right, humility. Seek help. Like it takes humility to be curious. It requires you to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to get help. And in a world that's changing this fast, faster than we've ever seen it, posture matters. And the posture of curiosity, the posture of seeking help matters. Otherwise, we could close ourselves off to information, to wisdom, and to opportunities.
It's so powerful, Neil. I agree with you 100%. So curiosity keeps us relevant. One of the things I love about John Maxwell, our mentor, the number one leadership guru in the world, right, is that he still, at his stage, written 92 books, sold over 40 million copies, and is recognized as the number one leadership expert in the world. He still stays curious. He's still learning. He made a statement the other day, there's something that I can learn from every person. And I think that curiosity is what keeps him relevant. That
Absolutely.
curiosity is what keeps us relevant. When we're certain about something or we feel like we have to be certain, that can make us rigid, where we're not allowing the newness. We're not allowing the opportunity to actually learn.
So Robin, before we go any further, I think that what you just mentioned about John Maxwell is so important for us. We look up to him, we see him and where he is. And here's what I love about the man that he is and the leader that he is. He's setting the example by being the example, right? Someone who could say, I've learned enough, I know enough, I don't have to listen, I don't have to be curious. And he could rest on his laurels and say, I'm relevant because of what I've done. That's not his example. He's saying, I'm curious enough to look at the future and to see what's happening. So I'm relevant because I'm still curious. And so I have to ask myself, how curious am I? Am I willing and open to learning from anyone, from anywhere, from any circumstance? So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I am afraid of becoming too rigid. I'm afraid of digging my heels in and saying, well, this is the way we did it 20 years ago, and by God, I'm going to die on this hill. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, that's so true. Right. It's like I said last week. It's what I said about email. I'm not going to mess with that thing. That's so funny.
Robin, hold on. Could you imagine you and I and us trying to prepare for life and the podcast? So how would we be communicating? Are we faxing? And I love the handwritten note and snail mail, but
That's so good.
even as we prepared for today, we had to get some stuff back and forth fairly quickly. Robin, thank you for having email, sir. You made my life easier by adopting email, even though you had dug in and said, I don't think this is a thing. I don't think I'm going to look into it anymore. Robin,
And I
man.
laugh and I laugh. And our listeners, you recognize I'm laughing at Robin. I'm laughing at myself, right?
Yeah.
But the encouragement to you is, Neil just said, we have to remain curious. We can't, just because it's new and because we hear things of the possibility of this and that, we can't just shut it out, right? We have to get curious about it. And
So, so,
that's a
so
leadership. That's a leadership. Yes, sir.
So I want you to go, because we already talked about those two shifts that make a difference in this time. Would you go into this third shift, especially because we're talking to our leaders here on the Big Life podcast? You want to live the big life. So now we're leading in the age of AI. And I think this third shift it could be the linchpin that changes everything, right?
Yes, sir. And I'll mention it and then I'll have you jump into it. But the third shift is moving from control to enablement.
Okay.
From
So
control to enablement.
ladies and gentlemen, many of us, we have been taught leadership from an archaic style now of leadership. And one, be curious, be willing to adapt. But some of us are only leading through control. And if your team can't move without you, you don't have a capacity problem. That's where Robin and I were often looking to see, do we have a capacity problem or not? If your team can't move without you, you don't have a capacity problem. You have a leadership structure problem. Leadership structure problem.
And we can pause on that one for a moment. Hear us on that, right? If everything has to wait for you, if you have to learn AI before your team can learn AI, if you have to decide how it can apply to your business, organization, profession, just fill in the blank for you. If you have to be the one to decide before your team can, then you have a capacity problem. That's strong, Neil.
And Robin, that goes back to asking those honest questions. Where am I the bottleneck? Even if it's unintentional. And those questions are not attacks, once again, they are opportunities, because once we see it, once we are aware of it, we can start building differently.
Yes. And so the leadership principle here that we want you to hear that's applicable, especially in this time of new and fast and uncertainty, is you don't scale by doing more. You scale by enabling more. So get your team involved, empower them, help them to start exploring and experimenting and checking it out as well. Right, sir?
Robin, I want to pause there as someone who has led teams, and we've had team members working with us. And I know we started maybe with just us and had to grow this thing up. That can be scary. It can be scary releasing control and going from control to enabling. And then, well, if I enable them too much, are they going to mess up? Are they going to take my stuff and leave and run? If they know too much, am I exposed? So how do we just get past that little piece, or how have you gone from control to enabling in some of your professional settings, Rob?
That's such a good leadership question, Neil. And the first thing that I would say is, it starts with who you have on your team. And so a mistake that I made earlier on is just hiring any and everybody. And I don't mean that as a put down, but in other words, for your team, you want to start with the best. So I think you start with the best. And then the second part of that, Neil, is that you trust. If people, so in other words, you believe in the potential of your team members and you recognize that you have to believe first. So you're going to take a degree of risk in that belief, right? But the thing I've heard you say, Neil, I've heard it in our circles, that if somebody can do a task at least 80% of how
Yeah.
good you could do it, then you can let them have it. Let them run with it. And so I think the point there, if you think about it from a leadership standpoint, if you had a good leader that was leading you, I'm talking to our listeners now, one of the characteristics of a good leader is that they empowered you.
Mhm.
They didn't come and micromanage. They didn't come and hover over you. They allowed you to take whatever it is that you were working on, whatever your role was, whatever the tasks were, and they allowed you to run with it. So those are the two things that I think come to my mind, Neil.
Well, thank you for that, Robin, because those are absolutely valuable. So we want you all to hear that about controlling less and enabling more. It's not about doing more, as Robin just mentioned. It's about enabling your team more. And so now we want to shift, Robin, because we never want to leave people there. So the new advantage, right? So we're talking about the age of AI, how to be a great leader in AI. So if everyone has access to tools now, it doesn't matter the tool, it doesn't matter the platform, what actually becomes the advantage?
I think that's a big one that we can talk about now. So that's what's going to separate us. So it's not information anymore, right? Because the truth is that all of us have access to information now. Like, it's amazing, Neil, isn't it? I mean, it's still, I was speaking with somebody last night, Neil, and they work with a tech company, a big
Hmm.
tech company, and he was telling me that they have AI hiring people. And I was like, what? And, so it's not information anymore. Like, yeah, I mean, like I had to kind of wrap my mind around that, but it's not information anymore because we all are going to have access to information. So the difference is discernment. And let's talk about that for a little bit, Neil.
Okay, so I think, and I might be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think a lot of people hear that and think it's abstract, right? They hear discernment and immediately they say, okay, so now it's just open for interpretation. But it's actually very practical. So discernment is the difference between reacting and thinking, right? So we have information, I just do something with it, or I have information and now I think about what I can versus what I should and what I will do with the information that I have.
It's so true, man. Quite frankly, That's where you as leaders, that's where Neil and I help others, is we're helping them because, you know, discernment, it's developed.
Mhm.
It's not given. That's something you have to develop. Most people don't develop it because most people, even you think about information now, a lot of times we get the information and we might stop at that first answer,
And that's good enough for us, Robin. I
right?
got the first one, I'm done.
Exactly. What my coach helps me to do, Neil, is he helps me to ask that by asking me that additional question or
Yeah.
getting me to ask that additional question. And so what we're suggesting that we have to do in this time is to upgrade our questions. Your output is going to only as good as your input. And so we have to upgrade our questions, Neil.
Okay, and so when I hear you say upgrade the questions, I think of the difference between give me ideas and act as a strategist. Here's my situation. And this is if I'm talking to AI, and I'm going to say Chat GPT or Gemini. Do we say give me ideas? I mean, yeah, that's one. Or we could say act as a strategist. Here's my situation. What are three options and the risk of each? That's not a small difference, ladies and gentlemen. That's a different level of thinking. And if we can think at a different level, we're going to get results at a different, dare I say, higher level.
So here, Neil and I, here where we're coming from this now, where we believe we're serving you with this, because we are in the same boot like you. In fact, there's some of you that are listening to this that are way ahead of us when it comes to the technology and so on, right? We're fumbling our way through it, right? I think Neil is probably using it even more effectively than I am. I am using it effectively, but there's a whole lot more room, right? So we don't have those answers. But here's what we're saying. Don't accept the first answer. Most people treat the first answer like it's final. And as leaders, we want to treat the first answer like it's just a starting point.
And so here's once again, Robin. So you're dropping these gems and you say final starting point. I hear it where if I take the first answer, I want to take that or look for a second answer. I want to treat it like a conversation, not a conclusion. So
Exactly.
now we can start talking where otherwise it's all right, well, that's done. On to the next.
Exactly. And so that's where we can separate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So discernment is not about getting answers fast, but it's about thinking deeper. Thinking deep.
Robin, ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to hear Robin when he say it's not fast, it's deep. This requires more of us. And we have to ask ourselves the honest question. Are we willing to do the hard but necessary work of thinking deeper?
That's it, sir. And that's what's going to separate. That's what I think as leaders, we need to be challenged with doing. And all of us can do that.
Hold on, Robin. So right there, we can if we want to. We just
Yes.
have to want to.
Yes. It's so true. And it's not easy, right? Thinking is hard. That takes hard work. It is going to take time. And a lot of times, like I was speaking with somebody just recently. This is like maybe, when was that? I think it was Monday. And we're recording this on a Tuesday. Person literally stopped me, Neil, and they said, "I don't like to think." And I can relate to that. It's thinking doesn't come. It's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. And I think it's okay for you and I to talk like this, isn't it, Neil?
Absolutely, because you started out the episode saying this is how we feel, but we don't vocalize it, we don't verbalize it, we don't say it. So many of us are in the same boat. We're like, yes,
Exactly.
we do want the benefits of discernment. Yes, we want to develop the muscle of discernment, but we also want to just get fast answers. We don't want to do the necessary hard work of thinking deeply. That's what's required of us as leaders if we really want to have impact. And so now, Robin, I know you're going to go to this filter that we have to use, especially when we're leveraging AI.
Yes, sir. And I thank you for that confirmation. And I just want to say it myself for our listeners to hear. Like I get frustrated. I've gotten frustrated trying to work through some stuff with Chat GPT, for example, for that reason. And so when we say it, we're not saying that and we've said it like 2 or 3 times now in this episode. It's not a criticism, right? But it's being aware. Thinking is hard. Thinking does take time. You got to do the work. That takes work. And it's work for all of us. It doesn't come easy for any one of us. I think maybe the point could be made that the more that you develop that muscle, is the stronger and the better it will get, but it still takes working at it. All right. So yes, the third one that we want to talk about is to filter it through context, because here's the point. AI can give us content, but we have to apply the context. That's context is something that we will have above AI.
Yeah. And you say that, but here's a truth that sounds like a contradiction. The same answer that we get from AI could be right for someone else, but completely wrong for you. And the reason being is because your situation is different. The perspective, the context of the content could be polar opposite. So we want to make sure that we are leaning and that we're filtering everything through that context and not just taking the content at face value.
That is good. That's so true, right? It could be good for this person or this situation, but not good for this person or this situation. So what we want to talk about a little bit now as we wind this down is we need to double down on the human advantage. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I love to say that the way Neil does. There is a human advantage.
Yeah.
And I think we need to remember this. We have an advantage as human beings. We have to be careful about the rhetoric that we're hearing out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is that human advantage and how do we double down on it? And again, we're not the experts, but we're going to share some ideas here with you on this episode. As everything becomes more automated, what becomes more valuable is what cannot be automated, right?
And I think this is where leadership becomes even more human, ladies and gentlemen, because people don't just need answers, because we can go and get answers. We can get an abundance of answers. So that's not what our people need from us as leaders. They need to feel understood. And can you
Come on.
lead with understanding?
Come on, Neil. That's leadership, right? Folks,
Yes,
do you
sir.
feel good? Do you feel good to hear that? That's what leadership is all about, right? It's about making people feel seen and heard and appreciated, understood, right? That's relationships. People don't stay because of efficiency. People stay because they feel seen. And so we can double down on that advantage. That's the opportunity that we have.
You just mentioned relationships. I did a keynote at a tech con over in Southwest Florida 2 days ago, Robin, and
You
it talks
go,
about
Neil.
now. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, don't think because I was keynoting at a tech conference that I'm techie, right? I tell everyone that I am tech adjacent. So I'm somewhere over there in the arena of technology as beepers, pagers, fax machines. So that's where I might be. But one of the things I talked about, you just mentioned relationships. I talked about trust. And so we can automate communication, but we cannot automate connection. We cannot automate trust. And that's built in moments. And so even as I was presenting, I said, how interesting is it that we're here at TechCon 2026, but we're doing it in person when we could have done it virtually? Maybe we could have had holograms or we could have had goggles on and been walking around in a virtual space. But there's something about the trust that is created in moments like this, in rooms like this, that cannot be replaced or automated.
I love it. I love talking about it, and not because I might necessarily be the best at it, but it's things that we've been working at. You and I have been working at these things, and there's always room for growth, but we have grown in this regard, and I know from that my influence has increased the better I can do these things. So that's why I am happy. That's why I'm smiling right now. If you're not seeing me on the screen, you're just listening to us. I have a big smile on my face because I know that all of us can do these things and it really separates us. It really creates an advantage. The other thing that I want to talk about in this realm, and so it's the idea of the human, doubling down on the human advantage, is your presence. Neil and I have talked about this on our previous shows. Neil, you remember we talked about like when you come home from a day of work or you come out of the office from a day of work, you want to pause before you go in and make sure you have the right presence of mind, because sometimes we can be exhausted, we can be distracted, we still have things on our mind that when we go and we're now around some of the most important, if not the most important people in our lives, and we're distracted and we don't give them our presence. So in a world today that's so fast and there's so many distractions, presence, your presence, my presence becomes rare. And rare things now become even more valuable.
Yeah.
Look people in the eye. Don't be thinking about the next answer. Be tuned in to the person that's in front of you. Be present. Right, Neil?
Absolutely. And when we talk about being present, we're going to finish out these on doubling down on the human experience and interaction with emotional intelligence. So many times we hear it as EQ, so the emotional quotient. And I love this part, and I have been victim to what I'm about to say. I've been on the receiving end, and I can tell, right? So AI can tell you what to say, but it can't tell you when someone needs something different, right? It can say, okay, well, here's what to say, here's how to respond. But AI, the bots, the algorithm can't tell you when someone needs something different. And I was in recently in a situation where I could tell the responses I was being given, they were from a live person. It was an actual human being, but I could tell they were automatic responses, right? And they didn't feel, they were not emotionally aware that, wait, this right here, this could be the thing to say, but maybe he needs compassion. Maybe she needs empathy. Maybe she needs sternness and boldness and to be challenged. AI does not have that ability.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I'm reminded, and I can hear because I hear somebody now, right now, speaking into my ear saying, well, we're going to train AI and AI is going to get better and so on. I believe that to be true. But AI can scale tasks, but only you and I can scale trust. That's what I hear you saying, Neil. And that's what this is all about. And that's the opportunity that we have.
Absolutely. And so here's the heart of Robin and myself. If you're listening to this and you feel like things are moving fast, you are not alone. You're not behind. You're in a moment of transition just like the rest of us.
Yes. And what we're suggesting is that it's in moments like this, they don't just change what we do, they shape who we become.
So hear us clearly. The question isn't just how do I keep up? It's who am I becoming in the middle of this thing? The future will not be led by the most informed. The future will be led by the most intentional leaders.
Right on. So listen, hey, before we wrap up today, we just want to say thank you for spending your time with us. And if this conversation added value to you, we're going to ask you to do us a favor. Would you do us a favor? We would really appreciate it so much. And would you follow the show so you don't miss what's coming next? You can just hit on subscribe, depending upon the platform that you're listening or watching on, or you can hit follow, and you'll get an update of when the next episode comes out. And please share this with someone that you care about who might need to hear this today. We appreciate you. And remember, as we wrap this up today, we love you. God loves you. And there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, remember, we're right there with you. We're in this
Peace.
together. Peace.